Essentially, I was willing to trade my own life in order to preserve my sense of masculinity. We've got to this place where men so deeply believe that men do not talk. We don't do emotion, we don't do vulnerability, we don't ask for help. That's a cultural belief, it's not fact. These beliefs are internalized and it's costing people their lives. The thing most likely to kill me at my age is myself. One man every minute takes his own life somewhere around the globe. If we can just drop that bravado for a bit, we won't be losing as many men around the world that we are.
Welcome to another episode of Mental Reset, the home of real talk and real tools for men's mental health. Before we start, could I just ask a quick favour, and just if you can check if you've already clicked that subscribe button, and if not, hit the button below. It really does help us grow and reach more people and reach more men who need to hear what we have got to say. As always, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Ryan Ridgway.
Supposed to under-promise and let me over-deliver. I don't know about wonderful, but it is great to be here, and I am absolutely buzzing for this one.
Me too.
Because the chats we've had before, and I mean, we might as well have just recorded the whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I do mean that, to introduce George Bell, the author of this fantastic book, Be a Man About It. Now, I've read a lot of stuff, as you have. You know, I've read all the kind of men's mental health books out there. And this one, for me, it's the one.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's not promotion, it's not paid partnerships, any of that stuff. Like, if you're going to read one book about reshaping modern masculinity in a healthy way, you know, I've read through it and it was like an autobiography. I was like, tick, check. I cried through it, and that's a good thing. Like, it stimulated thoughts, conversations. I'm buzzing. So welcome, George Bell.
Ryan, James, good to be here, and thanks for that intro. I mean, that was probably the best intro I've ever had. So yeah, thank you so much, and yeah, it means so much, and I'm really glad to be here and get into it.
Well, we're grateful for your work, because I know, and you know, we know this is going to help so many men, and you know, it gave me a bit of, in the right way, imposter syndrome, because I've worked in this world for 12 years. You know, I've had my own journey. I was like, whoa, hang on, there's so much more and different ways of reframing this and thinking about it that I wish I'd have known. So it's like a positive imposter syndrome, and yeah, we always start with asking our guests the why. Why write this? Why put this out there?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? And I think everyone that's in this space has a strong why, and that really is the case with me. I mean, the book is it's a professional passion. I've got professional interest, but really it came from a very, very personal place, which started just over 10 years ago for me. So yeah, about 10, 11 years ago, where, I mean, long story short, I was making plans to take my own life. That's the place I was in, and it was. Yeah, it was dark, it was heavy, felt so isolated and alone with it. And it had kind of, I built up to that point, you know, I didn't just obviously wake up feeling that way. It built up there for about a year, a number of months, where I was really struggling with my mental health. But I had no idea that is what was going on. You know, we weren't taught this stuff at school, right? We weren't taught about mental health illness, mental health education, any of that. So I had no awareness of what was going on, no language for it, and obviously I'll come on to this, but the being a man part of it meant I definitely wasn't going to confront it. So this thing was going on. I think that was how I described it at the time. I just felt weird. That was sort of my language for it, but I neglected it, didn't do anything with it. I was at uni at the time, so it's not exactly the place where you kind of go for sort of mental wellness and stillness. You know, it was late nights, long nights, lots of alcohol, nights out, all that kind of stuff. So I was sort of, you know, I wasn't looking after myself, and I was getting progressively worse. Left uni, and that was mentally, that was a really weird time, because I graduated from a good uni with a good degree. So the kind of perception around you, you know, from your family and friends is, wow, you've done so well. Mm-hmm. And now you're stepping out into the big wide world, you know, it's your oyster. You can do anything you want. And that's kind of, you know, that's sort of the message you get, right? Now you've got this degree, you can go anywhere, you can do anything. But inside, it didn't feel right, and I could feel that conflict of like, I'm meant to be happy right now. I'm meant to be really happy with this, and I wasn't. But I just kept neglecting how I was feeling, and that basically culminated in me feeling really suicidal, because I got to the point where I thought that just by avoiding it, it would go away, and it didn't, and it got worse. So then the place I got myself to was telling myself, I'm broken. Something's not right with me here. It's a me problem, and I don't think I can be fixed. I definitely can't talk about it. So then this thought enters your mind, which you should never have to hold, but this thought of, maybe it would be better if I wasn't here. Maybe that's my only kind of option here. And I think looking back on that, it just I feel so heavy for myself. Back then, I was 21, and I was holding this thought that maybe I've got to take my own life here. And that there was the period's very hazy. I think when you go through something like that, it kind of it's almost like a blur. But there's one memory I have which is really, really vivid. I was sat around a dinner table with my family, my mum, dad, and my brother, and we were talking about a holiday that we were going to go on the following year. And I was laughing and joking and saying I couldn't wait for this holiday. But up here, I was thinking to myself, I'm not going to be here to see it. And that's the thought I was holding, because I told myself, there's no way I'm making it out of this year. And I look back now and just think, I was 20 years old, and I was carrying that. I was holding that. At 20, I still felt like a baby, still felt like a kid, right? And that's what I was holding. But I think what's even sadder about it is my family were there. They were right there with me. If I just in that moment said, I'm struggling, they would have been there to help me immediately. But I didn't, because I'm a man, because we don't talk about this stuff. And that's my why.
I'm genuinely sorry you felt that way, brother. Like, genuinely. I know we say it all the time, Rob, but it's heartbreaking to hear that story, where the mask that we wear, that is, as you put so accurately in the book, strapped onto us from an early age, we're amongst people we love, we're smiling, we're laughing, we're joking, we're talking about, and then on the inside, your mind, your thoughts, your internal dialogue's like, oh, that won't be it. Like that's a heartbreaking space for anyone to be in. And as you've talked about in the book, it doesn't have to be that way. We can unravel some of this biology, societal expectations, generational differences in understanding, some of that history that you talked about. It's like passed on, and it's like, hang on, why do we feel that as men we've got to put the smile on our face, march forwards, be happy, go out and achieve, when on the inside, in our heart and soul, something more, something much darker is presenting.
Yeah, and I think that's, looking back, that's the part I'm saddest about with that whole journey, was that I was in this like turmoil, just such turmoil, and I felt so alone and isolated when I wasn't. I had an amazing group of people around me, really great family, great group of friends. I had a girlfriend at the time, really supportive girlfriend. All these people who, at the drop of a hat, would have been there to help me. But it was so deeply ingrained in me as a man that we don't talk about this stuff, that I never even made an attempt to ask for help. It was, I say people, it was almost like I'd had this like crude equation in my head that essentially I was willing to trade my own life in order to preserve my sense of masculinity. That was the equation for me, that it would be better to just leave the earth than it would be to drop this mask and show that I'm struggling with something. And again, like, I say that now and it sounds ridiculous, but it was so deeply ingrained in me that that's how we operate as men, that was the belief I held. And I know that this is my why and my story, but I also know it's not unique. And I know that hundreds of thousands of men are still struggling with this every single day.
Yeah, I know this is really not an uncommon thing either. And you talk really well in the book about the price we pay for emotional suppression, and that ultimately is the most permanent, the most and that finite. And it's books like this is hopefully going to spark the debate, get the conversation going, and make a change.
Totally, and that really resonated with me. You know, when someone says something like, "Oh yeah," and you connect to that part yourself, because it was really confusing for me as well. I'd lost hope and got sectioned due to suicidal crisis. My thought process back then was, "I'll show you." I'll show you, I'll take my life. Almost that old-fashioned, like, I don't want, I'm not willing to drop this mask. I'll even lean into it and go, I'm going to take my own life sober, because I was going through addiction services like that. That's just a dangerous space, and no one should feel they've got to carry that alone.
Yeah, particularly something like suicide and depression. You know, it tricks you into thinking that you should be alone, and it tricks you into thinking that you are worthless and you are weak. So it kind of compounds. You know, as being a man, I think men really struggle with shame, and they struggle with the idea of feeling weak because it's not masculine, quote unquote. And then, you know, depression and suicide and the rest of it, yeah, it tricks you into feeling that way. So I think for men, it's just so hard going through this stuff because it just keeps compounding. The shame and the depression, it just piles on top of each other. And, you know, it gets to this place where it just feels it's too much to handle. It's just, it's too much to bear, particularly I think if you've never had to deal with this before. You know, for me, I'd never had a conversation on mental health, mental ill health. I remember when I was younger, hearing a story of someone who'd taken their own life. And I remember thinking, God, like, what? How, like, why would you do that? How do you get to that point? I'd so disassociated myself from mental health. I thought I'd never have that. And then suddenly my first experience of it is when it's everything at once. It's all consuming. And I think it's just like, it's so much to deal with, right? And I think that's why a lot of men, they don't know what to do with it. They don't think they can talk about it. And that's why these horrible options present themselves. You know, it's not only just suicide, it's addiction, like you say. I think, you know, people find, I think men find ways of having to release this stuff in them that they don't know how to handle.
Yeah, you talk about that as a pressure cooker, you know, suppressing that emotion, and it finds the little side door, the way out through, let me try and regain a sense of control. And I'm talking from a place of experience. There's no judgment here, you know. I don't feel as much of a man. Let me start training, boxing, MMA, steroid misuse, and it's into body dysmorphia, how I feel about myself. Then it was addiction. It was just all this attempt to grasp onto this fragile sense of self, of what it is supposedly to be a man. It's what's supposed to be about. It's just, and it's a lot. It's a lot, right? It's like a lifelong journey for a lot of men, grasping at these little things, these different things, whereas actually we could just reframe masculinity the way it should have always been, potentially. When you look back in the book at the history and the Greeks and the way they approached what it is to be a man. Like, how have we got so lost along that journey of being in this space now where we feel like we can't be vulnerable, we can't demonstrate empathy, compassion, that stuff? It's just got really lost along the way.
Yeah, and I think the saddest part of it is that we've kind of confused like biology and science with belief and cultural conditioning. So we've got to this place where men, as I did, as I'm sure you both have in your journey, so deeply believed that men do not talk. We don't do emotion, we don't do vulnerability, we don't ask for help. That's just not what men do. That's just a societal belief. That's a cultural belief. It's not fact. You know, we as humans, we all have emotions, and we all have a compassionate center and the ability to feel empathy because it's a human capability. But we've made it into a sex-specific one. We've said that's for women. Men do the silence and the stoicism and the strength and all of that. When really it's, you know, this is a spectrum of traits and qualities which we all sit on at different points. But we've tricked men and tricked society into believing that it's two separate boxes. Men are placed, you know, boys are placed into this one box from a very, very young age. And so these beliefs are internalized, and they become more than beliefs, they become facts. And those are the facts that, as you say, we've passed down from generation to generation. And it's costing people their lives. It's costing men their lives.
The price of it, right?
Yeah.
It's like we sometimes have to lead by example as well. And even though we're all aware in this space, still some things take you by surprise. Like yesterday, you surprised me. And I've heard this before. I got out of the car, we were teaching together. He went, "Oh yeah, love you, brother." It took me aback. Now I've heard that from him before, and I've said it to him. But you know, when it just there's that moment and we go, "Oh, hang on, this this feels alien. Oh, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
And we had the brother bit on just to make it a bit more girl. Like, why can't you say I love
Oh,
you?
there's a fist bump as well.
I think there's a fist bump. So it'll take a while to get really comfortable in these spaces, but at least we're making an attempt, trying, leading by example, and that's a positive thing. Things will change slowly, sadly, won't they? They'll change over time. Yeah.
That was what you said about the feeling of emotion was something that really jumped out for me in the book as well. When you talk about the research into kind of females versus males and our belief systems. I mean, I think until recently, I genuinely believed men felt emotion less than women. I thought there was a genetic or biological difference in that, but actually it's, we feel emotion exactly the same, but men just don't express it or process it. So it's I mean, unless you think about it and, look into it, it's that just, like you say, becomes your, what you think is fact.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the bits I always try and focus on with this, that what the science shows is that, men and women feel emotions the same. They feel them just as deeply. We have access to the same range of emotions, and emotions are there to serve a purpose. They're a biological function. I think we've made them into this thing to be scared of, and we've labelled them good and bad. And for men, we've sort of culturally been conditioned to have two emotions, which is you can be fine or you can be angry. Anything outside of that is not for men, right? That was a good sketch from a comedian, Bill Burr. He's so good. He said, you can be fine or angry, and then he said anything outside of fine or angry is labelled as gay, right? That's what we've done with emotions. We've put a homophobic slur on them, when really they're a biological function that we all have access to. The way that men and women express those emotions may be different. So that there's some thinking that, for example, most men who have a higher level of testosterone than women, perhaps testosterone influences how we express those emotions. So there's definitely some biology at play, and there's definitely an argument for how maybe men and women do tap into those emotions differently. But the point is they're still there, and we still feel them. But we have tricked men into thinking they don't exist. And if you do start to feel them, there's something wrong with you. So I think the place I always try to go to first with this is, I think often the narrative these days jumps straight to just talk about it. Just talk about your emotions, talk about mental health, which we know is a very, very important message. But also, again, it's a hard one, I think, for men to grapple onto straight away. If they've never spoken, let's say for 40 years, then the message is just talk about it. It's like, well, that's a big...
It doesn't feel safe if they've not been doing that.
How? When? With who? I've tried that. They shot me down and said, man up, get on with it. I'm never doing that again. Like, okay, talk about it. Give me the tools to make awareness.
Yeah. But if we can just, as a first step, make them understand that their emotions they're there for a reason. They have them for a reason. It's science, it's science and biology we're talking about here. I think if we can educate on that piece, that feels really, really important to me. And to take away the shame from emotions. If you lose a loved one and then you're sad and you're grieving, that emotion is there for a reason. Your kind of level of grief is proportional to how much you loved that person. So if you're trying to suppress that emotion and avoid it, you're essentially suppressing the meaning that person held in your life. So why would you do that? But then I think how people express those emotions can be different. So for some men that might be talking, but it doesn't always have to be that way. It might be boxing, it might be going for a run. It might be meditating. I think we have to get to a place of helping people to realize that things they're feeling are there for a reason.
Yeah.
How they process them can be different.
Yeah.
But we have to move away from this, where a lot of men are, is they're not even getting to the point of feeling that emotion because they think it's wrong to feel it.
Supposed to feel everything as human beings, right? Not suppress the bits we don't like and seek out the bits we do and escape those bits. We're supposed to feel everything, but safely, comfortably. I think sometimes with emotions, we might feel something like impatience, intolerance, anger, frustration, or something, even numb. And it can be like that amber warning light you have on in the car, the one we've all left on far too long because we think that'll go off. That's nothing. But like I say, it's telling me something. Something's going on in my world, in my emotional state, to let me know. And generally we fear that. Oh, I don't want to feel that. I shouldn't feel that, even if we go with the stereotype of what it was to be a man. And I'm going to call this out live on the session. Has anyone here got a phobia of spiders? Because there's a spider that keeps running across this carpet.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd call that out.
I saw it over there.
Often we go,
yeah.
oh, I know it can't hurt you. No, if someone's got a fear of a spider, which is very common, there's one that's just dancing around this car park. So if you want us to move that, anyone, I'm all right with spiders. So
I'll be all right until it starts crawling up my leg. Then I'll probably scream on camera. Hopefully you can cut that bit out.
Well, you know what? Even this bit, right? We often go with phobias and fears that we have to push it down and be a man and hide it and laugh it off if someone chases me with a spider. But the mind will go where it wants to go. You know, sometimes phobias are there for a reason. You've had a negative experience, and sometimes they just are. But we often put the mask on, the guard up, and go, "Oh, yeah, I'm a man." No, if you're afraid of that, if it's raising your anxiety, that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, and I think like this ties so much to. It's nice how we're making the segue here. There is a link from spiders talking about today, but I think this ties so well to how I believe we should approach this and this space, and that's just removing this kind of shame and stigma and bravado from all these different kinds of conversations, because actually all of these topics, so many of these topics, we just carry internally, and we might struggle with them, we might feel the anxiety with them. That could be to a small degree, it could be to a huge degree, but the cultural conditioning that we have as men is to just, as you say, put on the mask, puff out the chest, pretend that thing's not affecting you. And that could be anything. It could be public speaking. You know, you're told to just get out on stage and be confident. Whereas I like to sometimes do the opposite. If I get out on stage and I'm feeling nervous, I say, do you know what, I'm feeling a bit nervous about this. And then immediately I think, you know, you're told not to do that because it's not professional. But actually I think immediately everyone relaxes because everyone immediately sees you as a human. They know that they would be nervous up on stage, most people. So now they can relate to you. And it's same with like hair loss, for example. I had a hair transplant a year ago. I talk about that publicly, talk about struggling with the hair loss publicly. Whereas again, you'd be told not to do that. You'd be told to hide it, which I did for a long time, you know, put my hair a certain way, try to avoid photos. You're told that's the thing to do. Whereas for me, I think we have to do the opposite. Bring these conversations out of the shadows, be honest about how we're feeling about them. I think that's how we draw more men into this conversation.
Yeah, shine a light on it, because then people realise, you know, they're not alone. You know, they don't have to face my feelings aren't. I'm not doing that alone. You know, hair loss, that's a big thing for me. I wear a cap and it's going south here. You wouldn't tell because I'm doing that, but it's on my agenda. It's in my mind. It's bouncing around somewhere. And that was the thing when I read the book. I was like, it was nice to go, oh yeah, and me. But also, and me too. You know, you feel less alone from seeing things in there where you go, I didn't even realise that I was feeling that way necessarily, but it's a thing. And the sooner we open up and have these conversations that people aren't having, people go, oh, I'm me. And then you build that community, that human connection, and we can have that relief in talking about stuff that maybe we knew we should talk about all along, but we didn't know how, when, where, or who with.
Yeah, because we think that when we go through something, we think we're the only one in the world going through it. When I was struggling with my hair loss, I felt like I was the only one in the world going through it, which obviously is ridiculous. You know, I knew other people were going through it, but I'd look at other people and compare and be like, well, mine's worse. I think you always find the way of making you isolate yourself with that thing, make yourself think either you're the only person going through it or you've got it worse than anyone else. And then you can't talk about it because you'll be shamed and shunned for it. But actually, once you do drop the mask and we do start to open up about this stuff, certainly in my experience, all I've found there is love and connection and community and people wanting to help. And the thing isn't as scary as you think it's going to be. I think you particularly as men, we can think maybe the world's just going to collapse when we open up. Our friends are going to just dismiss us. We'll be kicked out of the family home. You know, the world's going to cave in on us. And that was really what stopped me opening up when I was struggling with suicidal thoughts. And I was kind of forced to open up. My girlfriend at the time confronted me with abnormal behaviour. She said, you're cold, you're distant, you're withdrawn, you're angry sometimes. I knew in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm not keeping the mask separate here. The worlds are kind of bleeding into each other. So I had to open up. It wasn't very articulate, but I said something. I can't remember what. It was a jumbled up bunch of words. But it didn't matter. The point was I'd started the conversation and she reacted fine. Then we got my family involved. I told some friends. I was testing the water carefully. It took me a long time in between, but I'd sort of just start telling a new person, and the world didn't collapse in on me. And I started to realize, okay, I can be safe with this. I can be safe with these kind of conversations. And I've gone a lot further with that in recent years. Like, I talk about my hair transplant journey on LinkedIn. I've shared photos of it. Not saying everyone has to go and do that, but I think I've learned over the years that actually the world's a lot safer. Like, the people around us are a lot safer than we think. We've been tricked culturally into thinking that once we open up, that's it. You're not a man anymore. Personal experience has taught me that's not true. It's sure the same for you, and that's what this is about, right? Helping others realize they can do that too.
It is helping other people have a less difficult journey than maybe some of us. Some of the things that if I'd have known this when I was, I don't know, 21, 25, even 30, my experience would have been easier. It had been kinder to myself, and kinder in terms of how much I struggled in silence and kept it inside and made less mistakes. I feel like I'm the true, authentic me now. The big MMA fighter at 16.5 stone, who's like that. I always knew deep down that wasn't me. I was a sensitive child. I was creative, and from the bullying that you've mentioned also in the book, I was like, no one's ever going to bully me again. Let me regain this sense of control. But it was extreme. It was never enough. There was a ceiling to that, and then a ceiling beyond that, and I just got unhappier internally.
I bet you felt like a man though, right? At the time, because you're doing the masculine thing. You're doing something physical, strong, you look good. So
control.
Up there, you felt like a man. You felt like you'd done it. Yeah.
That's it. And that was like the real toxic, destructive driving force. I felt like a man. I can deal with this. But even though I knew deep down I was miserable, unhappy, it was almost like a self-destruct button that was slowly being pressed. And that resulted in, me being sectioned and me having to reevaluate what it is to be a man. Had what I've been taught by society, upbringing, influences outside, the environment, was that right? And it isn't right. We can change that. We can reshape it to be, I love building a healthier idea of masculinity. It's not now we're throwing away all the old stuff like resilience. Balance. You talk about that a lot in the book. Find your balance. My balance and your balance and your balance might be different, but I can only find that balance if I've got the awareness to apply it.
Yeah, and I think what you said there is so important. This isn't about like just ripping up the rules on masculinity, ripping up a version of masculinity that people have been used to for so long. And a lot of men do value things like strength and physicality and competition and going to the gym and toughness and grit and leadership. I think we have to celebrate those parts and recognize that there are times in life for that stuff. But for me, this is about expanding it out and recognizing there's times for all this other stuff too: compassion, empathy, vulnerability, community. That has been shut off to men for a long time. So this isn't about shaming one part of masculinity or shutting it down. It's just about expanding it out.
So in your book, there's some very specific topics in there that men are afraid to talk about. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I took a deliberate approach with the book where I think that often, like recently, the narrative around men and trying to reach more men is to go straight into male mental health and depression and suicide and, talk more. We should talk more, which I think there's a lot of important stuff in there. It's all, it's all very, very noble, and we can't forget that stuff. But I think also a lot of men find it hard to tap into that. They find mental health can be quite abstract. Like it's this concept they don't really understand. They've probably not sat with it, ever before. They find it hard to relate to. So I think how I try to reach men and what I found works is go into the really specific stuff that they're sat with every single day, the things they're actually carrying, bringing home, the things that never get talked about. And that might mean going into some awkward conversations, taboo conversations. There's things in there like erectile dysfunction, sexual function issues, addictions, porn, sex, gaming, gambling, hair loss, body image. We don't often associate body image and body image anxiety with men. We see it as a feminine thing, but men feel it as well. So I think if you go into these really specific topics, and it's not all negative. You might be talking about money and fatherhood, work, purpose, but I think we have better conversations on these, we will reach more men, and we'll be having better conversations on masculinity and men's mental health. Like if you're talking about hair loss, for example, you're talking about mental health, even if it's not explicitly said. Because wrapped up in that is shame and identity and confidence and all that stuff. But I find that's the way to get men in. Be really, really specific. on this stuff that they're carrying every day. And then that's often the gateway to the deeper conversations. Like I said I share my hair loss journey. I've talked about my hair transplant. I've had more men reach out to me in the last year about hair loss specifically than I have had in 10 years on mental health, because that's like the door open. And they'll come in and it will be, the first sort of set of questions is very kind of practical and functional. It's, where did you go? How much is it? But I'll always ask, how are you getting on with it? And then that sort of ladders into the, I'm not really that happy with it. And then you ladder down. They don't come in with that first, but that's how I think we can reach them and get them in.
Yeah, it's opening the door, isn't it? Tackling some of these topics, and even I find that sometimes can still, and this can be a man thing, humour as a tool to enter into that conversation. But then also we don't want to belittle that.
Yeah.
So humour's okay as an entry point into the conversation, but then we've got to go, how do you feel about that? And what's that like for you? And there's a deep layer, but I love that approach.
It is sometimes just about getting that little foot in, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And a lot of the topics in there, I was just like, tick.
Yeah, man, like totally for me, when I read the book, it was just like every single page. So I'm fairly new to this, this industry, this environment, and talking openly about men's mental health. And every page I read, I was like, yeah, this is why I'm doing what I do. I absolutely loved it. And I mean, you look at a book like that, and you think, like, this is a book for men, but really, it is, but also it's for partners, mums, females out there to get a better understanding of, what a man would go through, what it is to be a man, and how best to support a man as well. So I just think it's such a valuable book. And one of the biggest things, that stood out for me in the book, they really knocked me back, was the way that you described the statistics relating around suicide for men under 50 in the UK. And do you want to do it?
Yeah,
Still your
yeah. I think I said the thing most likely to kill me at my age is myself, which I think when you actually sit with that, you really feel like you look at your hands and you're like, these are weapons almost. I think it really helps to bring it home. I think when you read the statistics or you see stories, it feels far away.
Exactly.
Then I think you feel it.
Yeah, I mean, people are able to kind of push mental health to one side and push the thoughts of suicide to one side because they don't think it's going to happen to them. They don't think it's going to happen to people close to them. But when you put it that way, the biggest risk to males in the UK aged under 50 is themselves. You apply that to people the men the biggest risk to their life is themselves. And that's where you have to sit up and take note, don't you? You have to.
Really, it just, And then that's the thing with the channel. Often people think, well, that's not how I identify. I don't identify as a man, but it's for sisters, partners, mothers, brothers. It's for everyone, because even if you're not a man, you'll know a man, you'll care about a man, you'll love a man. And reading some of that stuff of knowing how it can be really, really hard. And you said this at the start, okay, let's talk about mental health. It's harder than that, just to be given permission. How am I gonna do it? What's the space? I've not been brought up to understand emotions or be comfortable talking about it. And the further we can break that down, the better, because sadly with suicide, it's like a worldwide problem for men. Only this week in America to talk about it, because I'll remove any names always. Someone who I taught, they said, oh, my husband, he's struggling. He's lost 4 friends this year to suicide. This year, 4. We're in April.
That's insane.
And it's just far too common. It sadly doesn't take me by surprise anymore. It shocks me and it hurts me deeply, but it's not like that. That should be like, whoa, that never happens.
Like, it is a global problem. Like you say, it's a global problem. It's in pretty much every single country around the world, if not every single country, more men take their own lives than women. 1 man every minute takes his own life somewhere around the globe. So if you think literally every minute of every single day, so it's a real problem, global problem. And I think, as you say, we're often shocked when it happens. Like, how have we got there? And I think that's why we can do more to have some of these conversations on the stuff that comes earlier. I think that, you know, people are often quick to throw their support around reducing the male suicide rate, you know, male mental health, and that's obviously really, really important. But that's the stuff that comes at the end. You know, someone gets to the place of feeling suicidal because of the stuff that's built up, sometimes for decades. And this is the stuff we don't always feel comfortable talking about. But that's where we start to solve for some of this, right? And it's not just mental health, like it's physical health as well. You know, men are resistant to going to the doctors and to getting their health checked up because, you know, they're men, they're masculine, they're strong, they're macho. We don't go to the doctors. But then 15 men die prematurely in the UK every single hour under the age of 75. So, you know, the prematurely is the key word there. They shouldn't, you know, probably shouldn't have passed away from those things. And we're talking cardiovascular disease, cancer, stuff like this, where, you know, if we can just drop that bravado for a bit and go and get checked up on this stuff or talk on this stuff, we won't be losing as many men around the world that we are.
Yeah. And I love in the book how there's a lot of lived experience, because I think that's a powerful tool to get us to share our journeys. You know, I always say lived experience, when you share that in the right way with the right person, it might form part of that person's survival guide. So some of the people you've interviewed, you know, Jeremy Lipswich, Paul Merson, loads of lived experience stories in there that I think gives us that permission to start the conversation.
Yeah. And I deliberately tried to get as big a range of people as possible, different ages, backgrounds, ethnicities, sexualities, beliefs, just huge range, because I think, you know, almost the whole argument of the book is there's no one way of being a man. I think that's what we've been taught, right? There's one way to be a man. It's you know, go to the gym, get big biceps, be strong, and that's you're kind of there. I think the whole point is that there's no one way of being a man, and I've almost just tried to show that through interviews rather than keep saying it. Just show it. Just here's 40 plus men with different stories, different backgrounds, different ages. Try telling me now that there's only one way of being a man.
Yeah.
Like you can't run this. You know, we've got people in there from army veterans, ex-police officers. I deliberately wanted to go for some of these macho industries as well to again show that, you know, you can still be this macho man at times. There's also space for the other stuff, right? The vulnerability and the compassion too.
Yeah, well, honestly, it's moved me, this book. It's moved me. You know, 12 years full time in this space. I don't often get to say that, and it did. I absolutely love it. Brother, give me a hug. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.
Thank you for writing such a good book.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Before we wrap up, we will put the link in the description, but tell people, you know, where they can go get the book, how they can connect with you, and also maybe what's next for George Bell.
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn mainly and Instagram, and then the book's available everywhere, basically any good bookstore, so wherever you get them. And yeah, I'm doing more in the space, like got more books planned. And yeah, going into schools, going into businesses, just trying to get it in the hands of people and trying to get the message to men and women. Because yeah, you know, and I know that we need this message, right? Yeah. Things still need to change.
We need it 100%.
Doing an amazing job with
it.
You too, both you two as well.
So we'll put all the links to how you can connect with George in the description. I'm going to throw a little curveball in there as well, James. James is thinking, what's he going to do?
I'm not sure what's coming in.
I don't know what's coming.
Started doing these.
We want people to subscribe, like, and share. Our core belief and reason for doing this is to help raise awareness around men's mental health. So, the first 20 people to comment on this episode, we are going to gift you this fantastic book.
That's amazing. I'll make sure it's not my mum just commenting 20 times, but yeah, just bump it up. No, that's wicked. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we want this out there. Oh, well, look, for the right reason, right? This book's really touched my heart and soul, as I know it as yours, as I know it will so many people. So why wouldn't you want to endorse that?
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks, guys. I'm touched. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Wicked. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching.